think we can go ahead and get started. I will call this meeting, regular meeting of the Maple Run Unified Board of Directors to order at 6:04. Today is 2 January 2019. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Yes.
We're meeting at the central office. We have 9 directors present representing 8 votes. First item on the agenda is the agenda review. Does any board member need or wish to make any changes to the agenda? If not, I would look for a motion to accept the agenda as is.
So moved.
A second? Thank you. Alice, Al? Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Agenda is approved 8-0. Ask everyone to please rise for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any visitors tonight that would like to address the board? Okay, move on to the consent agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda we have approval of the minutes of 19 December, the media packet, the grants from attachment 5C, and our financial statement, which is attachment 5B. Would any of the board members like to remove any of those items from the consent agenda for discussion or a separate vote? If not, if there's no objections, the consent agenda will be approved. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Move on to old business. We have the budget review. Hand that over to Martha.
Yes, so I have an updated budget packet. So if you'll take one and pass them around. I think I have enough for everybody.
Draft number 2.
Draft number 2.
Is there a problem with this Google site? Is there a problem with the Google site? Does anyone else having trouble?
Pulling up
No.
the,
Yeah, I do.
pulling up the attachments.
I'm not using the Wi-Fi, but I'm having trouble getting the attachments to show.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time getting my attachments to show.
Well, I'm
Sometimes you have to open it in a
using
different tab.
Oh, perfect.
Hey, Mike, sometimes you just hold down on it and then it'll pop up a menu that says open in a new tab. That's what I have to do. Try that.
Thank you.
If you saw a message, you guys see it?
They have one. Well, there is no attachment for this agenda item, so. So this is draft number 2. I have gotten a little bit of information from the state, which actually has to do with the common level appraisal, which we'll get to in a minute. That's going to be the last page. This draft, the expense budget is up. We've had $250,000. And the reason for that is we're looking at reconfiguration of the central office staffing and possible addition of some social and emotional learning support systems. And I'll let Kevin speak to that.
To be clear, this is up 250 from the last draft.
From the last
Not
draft.
the last budget.
Correct, no, this is from the last draft. So what that does is it brings our proposed expense budget to a 5.1% increase. That is broken down by regular education is up 2.4%, special education is up 2.9%, and the Northwest Tech Center is just about flat, it's down 0.2%. That's what makes up the 5.1% increase. Our education spending figure would be also increased by $250,000 at this point. That may change depending on what we do decide to do with that social emotional learning supports. Some of that might be special ed eligible, which would mean some additional revenue sources. But at this point, we're not calculating that in this draft. Our equalized pupil count is still an estimate. The state is still working through their issues with the updated student count system that they have put in place. What I have done is I have gotten information from our IT department, the student counts that they submitted to the state. And according to them, we only had a couple of students that there was an issue with the matchup with the state numbers. I've used the state template for calculating the equalized pupil count for the 2-year average. And so I'm using an estimate of 2,600 equalized pupils, which I believe is still a conservative number of what may come through with the state when they finalize the statewide equalized pupil count. So I'm anticipating that 2,600 could be slightly more, which would then reduce our ed spending per equalized pupil. It would reduce that, which would then reduce the tax rate more than what I'm projecting at this point. So right now, I'm using an estimate of 2,600 equalized pupil. I think that's fairly close. It's still a little conservative. I haven't used the full number that is possible to come across, but I'd rather be a little conservative at this point than overestimate.
So even at the 2,600, that's still a 3% increase?
That's, yes, for the equalized pupil
Yep.
count.
Yeah.
The count itself is an increase of 2.95%.
So
increase.
I'm a little confused. Is that an increase over the last year or over the last document you handed out last meeting?
The 2.95% increase for equalized pupil is an increase over last year's equalized pupil count. The 2,600 versus the 2,500 equalized pupil counts. Which gives us an estimated per pupil spending of $15,517 compared to last version of the budget, which was a 2.81% increase because we have increased the equalized pupil. That per pupil spending is now looking like 0.5% increase over the current year budget.
That's awesome.
Yes,
That
it is.
awesome.
That is truly, if that's the number that it ends up being, that's remarkable.
I want to get to the last page.
So as I explained, this version of the budget is at $250,000. I don't know if Kevin wants to speak to it more at this point or not.
Why don't we go through the whole thing and
Okay.
I'll hit some highlights.
Yeah. At the bottom of that first page, I have highlighted for myself the announced tuition rate, which needs to be set prior to January 15th, which will be before the next board meeting. But because the state hasn't finalized the equalized pupil counts, they haven't given us FY18's allowable tuition rate, which is what I go by to calculate for the next year's tuition rate. So my suggestion is that we just don't increase the rate, we just leave it status quo, because at the end of any fiscal year, you have the opportunity to adjust it if you have billed too low, or if you bill too high, you have to refund anyway. So it's just an announced rate that we use to bill for. So I'm going to suggest that we just let it ride with the rates that we're currently using. And so I'm not asking for any action on that this year at this point.
So no actions needed, it just stays.
No. So page 2 of this packet is the summary of expenditures. The only line item that has changed, and it's only because I'm not sure where the changes are going to happen, I have put the $250,000 increase in under the guidance and student support services area. That does not necessarily mean that's where the actual expense will be incurred, but I needed to put it in there to have the expense budget total be the correct figure. So page 3 is just the second half of the expense budget showing the new proposed expense budget amount of $57,312,798, which is a 5.1% increase over the current year adopted budget. The next page is the revenue projection information. And again, the only figure that I adjusted was the education spending, the figure in the yellow box. I increased that to $250,000. Again, the revenues, once a budget has been adopted by the voters, we have until June 1st to submit the voted budget information to the state. And that's when we can update our revenue sources. So if we, at that point, determine we have more revenue sources in some area, and if we determine where some of that additional spending might fall in special ed, I would adjust the revenue sources so that could decrease that amount of education spending needed at that point, which again would be favorable to the taxpayers. The last page is the page that you all want to look at. You all are anxious to see. The tan box is the FY20 information. Again, using my estimate of 2,600 equalized pupil count, we're showing an estimated spending per equalized pupil at $15,517, which with the yield that the commissioner has announced to use for this purpose of 1066, it gives us an equalized rate of $1.45. And then we have our 6-cent merger incentive, so it brings our tax rate to $1.3948, which is actually 3.6 cents less than the current year. That's including the 2 cents that we lost in our incentive. And then I have the CLA adjustment information in the box below. Each town's CLA percentage drops slightly, which anytime you drop the CLA percentage, it increases the tax rate. But as you can see, even with the proposed information we have, if all the figures hold fairly true to what we're presenting, each town will see a tax rate decrease, with town being about a 1 penny tax rate decrease, Fairfield at about almost 3 cent tax rate decrease, and city at 2.71 cent tax rate decrease with this proposed budget.
Those are great numbers.
I know.
This is at a time when we lose 2 cents on our incentive.
Yes.
Healthcare is up, what, 11%?
11%. Excuse me. Yes.
And we're still coming in.
Yes.
I would add to those things, special ed up 2 million. Labor costs, as you know from your contract, was 3+%. We lost our pre-K early childhood expansion grant. This was the year, and we were able to keep the program status quo. And with all that, we still have a decrease. I would just highlight a couple things that Martha's already talked about, but it's so nice to see that equalized pupil count increase so significantly. Those of you who've been around the rest of the state probably know that most of the state numbers are dropping steadily, significantly. I talked to a superintendent the other day that in the last 5 years, the enrollment is down 25% in central Vermont. So to have those numbers up in 1 year, 75, and as Martha mentioned, Martha being Martha, she's put a conservative number in, it could even be a little bit higher. So that's great news all the way along. I just want to mention one other aspect, and I alluded to it last time. Thanks to the work of the people around this table, we had about a $900,000 decrease in personnel costs. That's and it had to do with the fact that one thing we've learned through our work with DMG, that Jim has been at,
Excuse me, DMG.
DMG is District Management Group.
Thank you.
It's the group, Mike, that we were working with ever since the transition.
Yeah, I got it.
And we've learned a lot. And one thing we learned relative to personnel is, as you make changes, you have to cut back a little bit to then add, and to repurpose some of the staffing. So, quite painfully in some cases, the staff around this table were able to cut around 900,000, allowing us now to do some of the priority items we need to do around social and emotional learning. And that's where the additional 250 that we put back in. So we still cut about 650,000, which is another reason we're seeing things so low. But it is good news, and they're great numbers.
I think they're great numbers. I'm just curious, the social emotional thing, the 250 we're putting into that?
Yep.
How do you know that's enough, or how is that established?
We put an estimate right now in, Mike, because we don't have good figures for how we're going to be putting some of these people in the schools. So we put an estimate, and we're not going to go over that.
Yeah.
So I can't be, we've talked about it, Martha and I talked about it, we put in what we thought was a reasonable number for approximately 3 to 4 staff, and work from there. So we're pretty excited about the whole thing. We're moving in the right direction.
So we may find in the future we might need more, might need less, or...
Yes,
Okay, that's the crux of it.
yes.
So if you guys remember, a year ago, we tasked this administration right away with looking at ways how to do things more efficiently, leaner and smarter, looking to this day, because we knew we were going to lose 2 cents on the tax incentive, and we knew labor costs were going up. And I think they've done exactly what we've asked them to do. True, we got a lot of help from the equalized pupil, but the reduction in the FTEs and the way you're looking at repurposing, I think, is exactly what the board asked you to do a year ago. So, good job.
Yeah.
And this budget is proof. I mean, with all the things going up, and we're looking at, the taxes going down in all 3 towns.
So, this is a Martha question. On the last page, the adjusted tax rate under CLA,
Yeah.
those numbers, like for San Luis Town's $1.38, is that added to the school tax rate, or is that the
That
adjusted?
is the school tax rate.
Right, okay. So how does the CLA, we don't know the CLA.
The school tax rate before any CLA adjustment is $1.3948,
Right.
okay? That figure is adjusted by each percentage
So that's
by
what
the
I'm asking.
municipality.
Okay.
So that $1.3948 turns into $1.3692 for town. So the $1.3948
Yeah, I got it.
turns into $1.5281 for Fairfield because of the CLA adjustment.
Right, I was just asking that,
Yep,
what
yep.
those numbers are.
Yep.
So these numbers here are the tax rate.
They are the
Estimated
estimated tax
tax. I
rates.
get it.
Yes.
You've been telling me that for years. I forgot to say estimated.
Yeah, that's the estimated tax rate. And it's compared to FY19 actual tax rates, which are the first columns in the white. So Fairfield currently is paying $1.55 for a tax rate, almost $1.56.
I'm concerned about all the tax rates, but
Yeah, I know. We all are.
It just seems like town soon has a better tax rate, but
It's only because of the common level of appraisal. It's
know.
only because they've been appraised more recently.
it's stuff we can't control. I get it.
Well, and we were pretty much overly appraised, way above the market value.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and that's why their CLA is over.
Is it
1.
over 100%?
Yeah, they start out around 110.
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot.
Was that arbitrary, or is it?
No, it's a
The
formula.
state.
Is there a formula for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's to make everybody level.
Yeah. Don't have her do it on the board.
Okay.
I think this is a fantastic job. This is all good, great news. To present a budget, to the voters that effectively, the estimated cost per pupil is 0.5%. That's next to nothing. I mean, that's pretty much level. The total budget's a little bit more, but we have more students. So-
Right. And our revenue sources are up too.
Right. That's great.
Thank you, Mark.
Actually, thank you, everyone's done this. This is
Yeah, it's not just me.
exactly
This
what
is-
we,
I know that you always have good results.
I remember the conversation now that you bring it up. I mean,
That's
it's
exactly what we asked them to
exactly
do.
what we asked them to do, yeah.
So,
There was an extra packet, you might want to
There
send
is.
this to Nilda so she can have a copy.
What is it?
It's the budget.
It's the budget, no, but just to bring you up to speed, everybody's taxes are going down.
You're serious?
Yes,
Well,
I was just telling you that.
everybody in this district's taxes are going down.
Well, great, not just mine. Okay, good.
So, just one thing, I guess I'm adjusting to the yield rate idea. That won't change, will it? Or is that something that could change?
That could change. That also is the same thing every year, that the legislature could change that
Okay.
figure, yeah. But that's the figure that the tax commissioner has sent out and announced. And again, it's an estimate. It's
And, just
what has been announced. The legislature can change that number, yes.
and I know we're going to get to this later when we go over the actual ballot. But the piece on, the number on the ballot for the budget will be the total budget, the 57,
312, 798.
57, 312.
Right.
And then it will say this is an increase of,
It will say then the education spending per pupil is the 15,517. Then it will say the increase in the education spending per equalized pupil
Yeah.
is the 0.49%.
0.49%.
0.49%, correct. Those are the three numbers that will be on the.
Zero is a number, make sure you say it.
Zero is going to be in that first spot, yes.
You put 2 zeros?
0.49.
It's mathematically correct.
Yes, those are the figures that would go on the warrant and the ballot.
Well, that's great news. Any other questions, comments? Making life easy.
When do we take action on this to approve it?
I would suggest, my suggestion would be at the next board meeting, only on the off chance that we may get more final numbers on the equalized pupil count.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
So since we're talking about money, let's move on to item 6B, which is a bond. Any attention?
So the bond information was presented at the last two board meetings, I believe. And the question for tonight really is whether or not the board wants to put a bond article on the warning.
Comments?
We were all in favor at the last meeting.
And when we get to the review of the draft warning, we do have some language on there regarding the bond. So,
Has anybody heard any discussion in the community about it at all?
I was gonna say, should we socialize it more?
Yeah, I
Well,
think
if we're going to put it on the ballot, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna say the only reason I brought up the Fairfield gym, because back when we were selling this consolidation, we talked about, one of the things we said would be the advantage is getting everything that we need on one bond and get it done. And I understand there could be more than one bond, Jeff, but that's sort of what we told Fairfield. And Sean, we were told for 10 years on the Fairfield board that that gym doesn't qualify for middle school phys ed, so that's where I was coming from. And you had told me that it does qualify. So, I mean, it's still something I think you might see come up in a community. The community might bring it up, and it might be something that we look at, they look at for fundraising, or that we look at doing later on. But I just want to point out, we did say to Fairfield that this was something that we were looking to do.
And Mike, I think it's not really about gym class so much as it is about middle school athletics.
I know.
And the size of the court for basketball, which is that we have a small court.
I understand that. I've always understood that, but just when you told me that 2 meetings ago, I was surprised because we were always told something different by the architects over the course of the 3 different incarnations of the building thing. So that's my only remark about the bond.
Anything else?
Well, if we put it on the ballot, we'll get an answer about how
That's
the
right.
community feels about it. Certainly something we probably need to do.
Well, I know, just from a security point alone, I've had people come up to me and say, you know, what can you do to that high school to secure it up? And this is it. I mean,
I think there needs to be a good article with pictures on the paper.
Oh, don't worry,
There will be.
if this is all voted on and with us, starting tomorrow, we'll start the process of what that will look like and have a campaign out there. I foresee where we should have chances where Chris can do tours and bring people in and look at this, and we'll get it out there.
Good.
so are you looking for action then to move forward with this? Is that the?
I think, yes, I think we would need an actual motion to approve moving forward with a bond. And then when we get to the warning, the language on there.
So
will also-
moved as you spoke.
I'll second it. And that's just to move forward with it, and we'll address the number on the article.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Or you can say in the motion.
More discussion? Questions? All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 9-0. All right, that brings us to student freedom of expression policy, which is attachment 6C. We saw this for the first time, I believe, last meeting.
What's the warning we need? The motion, what motion do we need? Warning for approval?
Adoption, right?
Adoption.
Adoption, okay, so moved.
Thank you, Jeff.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Discussion on this?
Is there anything about this that could get us sued? You know, this is a publication. I mean, just about school journalism. I don't know.
I'm not sure if suit's the right word, but certainly you saw what happened in Burlington,
Okay.
and this corrects that.
Just for some background, I pretty much almost got my high school suit in journalism. So, and it was within my, I didn't do anything wrong.
He's bragging.
Oh, you should have seen it. There was walkouts and everything, it was fantastic, but it was, I just was curious of the legal end of this. I don't really know how it works.
This is a VSBA model policy.
Yeah, it sounds fine to me.
We're fine
And it's
with
a
it.
required policy, right?
Yes.
And as Chris mentioned last time, we pretty much do it. We're very, on the high, not just the high school, but especially the high school with the newspaper. It doesn't have an issue, but we should have the policy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've always found the paper to be pretty good, just to point out to Chris.
Just make a note that Malone can never write for that.
Yes.
I use a different name.
All right, any other questions or discussion?
Is there some reason why some of it's highlighted in yellow?
Those were additions, those were changes that
Just wondering.
principals.
It's actually yellow journalism.
Very good, yes. Well done.
Did you two set that up before the meeting?
That was prepared.
Nice.
Nice, nicely done.
I get your bond, you get.
All right.
All right, no more discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, C11 is adopted, 9-0.
Thank you.
Brings us to new business, 7A, set the number of high school students for choice. This is Act 129, we do this every year, I believe.
So, I'll start.
Yes.
I'm not speaking to this.
Well, you've done everything else tonight.
I know, but I'm about ready to sneeze.
So just to remind,
I'm not speaking.
to remind the board, there is a thing called Act 129, which is the school choice law that allows students from other non-school choice school districts to have some flexibility about where they go to school. And we have to put a number on how many we accept of those people. Chris will tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's each year increasingly, there's a few more people, students that want to come to BFA. We had the number at 20 a few years ago, I think when BFA had their own board. And then we raised it a bit, and now we're at 25. To my knowledge, we haven't had over 25, but we've had close. So each board in the state every year has to state what their maximum number is that can come in. And if it's more than 25, it's like our own student transfer program that we've started with the elementary schools. It's a lottery system. But we've come very close to reaching the 25. And incidentally, other good news, kids coming from our district don't necessarily want to go out of the district. What do we have, like 2?
It's a very small number, like 3.
And yet we have close to 25 that want to come in, which says something positive. So the board has to make a decision every year on the number. I think we're recommending right now that there's no need to raise it, that we're pretty much where we need to be.
Move that we continue the numbers at 25 for incoming students from outside the area.
And 40 to leave, 2 out, or no?
Yeah, I always skip over it because it's never an issue. But yeah, we should also state the number.
You want to keep it at 40?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that closely
Is that okay?
represent the number of people leaving?
No, as I said.
That's right. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any other discussion on that? Questions?
Just emphasize to the people watching this that it was high school.
Yes, this is high
Yes,
school.
it's high school.
Thank you.
But my question is, when is the last year that kids from Fairfield are grandfathered? Like, I'm gonna say out or in.
2020, I think?
So
So
FY 18 was the first year.
Been around 2 years.
There were 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, right? Current year, we have 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. Grades, not grades. Next year will be 11 and 12th grade, so that'll be 20. So 21 will be just seniors, so 20.
So 2 more years.
2 more years.
because then we might see an increase, kids from Fairfield that want to go to Enosburg, because they're not counted right now.
Oh, yeah,
in
they're
the-
counted right now.
They're not counted
Not
as
the ones that are,
grandfathered in.
right, right.
So, do we know how many kids go to Enosburg from our district?
Other than the ones that were grandfathered in,
Yeah, other than the ones that were grandfathered in.
I don't know. I don't have that information. We only had like, what, we say like 3 students.
We
that
sent
are
a few last year, but that's
residents.
through that other act that, right?
This is the one.
This is that same, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
So
we
the
sent
old
a few.
system, I remember
So
4 or
it's
5 a
probably-
year per grade.
Yeah, it's probably those 3 or 4
Yeah, it was
that went
traditionally
Fairfield
around 3,
students.
4, 5.
Yeah, I guess,
Yep.
Yeah.
Well under the 40.
it was
Well,
actually
under the 40.
very, very rarely over 5, Kevin, for the time that I,
Yeah,
you
Yep.
know.
So the limit wouldn't be our limit anyway, it would be
it would be
like what, it
Enosburg's
is,
limit.
but I mean,
Yeah.
our number's high enough.
Yes, whether or not you use for let's.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
We would still get the money.
Okay, anything else? We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Approved 9-0. Okay, draft warnings, attachment 7B. I think we're interested in the one with the bond, correct?
Yep, but you're also gonna wanna look at the whole warning, make sure that we've got all the right dates and we've accounted for all the different positions that need to be voted in. The second page is the one with the Article 6 and 7 that have to do with the budget and the bond. And again, I'm thinking that you probably want to wait to approve the warning next meeting when we have the actual budget amount that you want.
Yeah, makes sense.
in there.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
So, no action on this, or were you just looking for things that we might want to change?
We want to make sure that
Wanna make
we've
sure
got everything.
If you see anything that might not be accurate.
Correct.
Sometimes we skip a date or miss a date.
Well, the term, one of the terms for the position for town says a 3-year term then expiring in 2020.
Right, because that's Sally's position,
So
that
is
she
it
was
a year?
appointed.
Or is it a 3?
It's a balance of a term.
It's a balance of a term.
Oh, okay.
Which is 1 year.
There's 2 slots.
Yeah, okay.
There's the 1 year
Okay,
and there's
yeah.
a 3-year term.
You're all right.
It wasn't me, it was Al who figured it out.
Thank you, Al. Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
Oh, the
Balance, yeah,
there
it
it
says,
is.
it says balance of a 3-year term expiring on 2020,
Yeah, no, I just, okay.
which is 1 year.
Again,
Oh. Okay. On page 3 of the warning is the informational hearing information. And Brenda's put in the date of February 27th for the informational meeting. So we do need the board to determine whether or not that's a good date for that you want to use for that date, for that meeting.
what day is that?
Wednesday.
28.
And I had, Jim, I had questioned about doing it here, just because, well, one I know is we anticipate that no one will come, but we want people to come. And I've attended a lot of meetings here as a member of the public, and it's not the most inviting space. You know, you walk in, you go, where am I supposed to sit? And as far as giving a presentation, it's not great. I just would suggest we do it at one of the school libraries, like the high school is a common place where we do stuff. Just seems like,
Central location.
yeah.
And when we do use this room for an informational meeting, it's not set up like this though. It's set up with the screen up front and then it's just chairs. So
Last year was here.
last year it was here and it was just set up with just chairs in the audience. There were no tables.
I mean, I came in late, but I don't remember, was it full, was it crowded?
No, we had,
It was more crowded than the year before.
we had
More
probably
crowded than a lot
10
of
people.
years.
There were 11.
Last time.
There was about 11
Well,
community
then-
members and they
yeah.
were from Fairfield.
They were all Fairfield.
Great.
No one.
We were just
talking about it
Yes.
at school.
Yeah,
Were there? Really? Oh, that's good.
yeah. So, you know,
Wherever we want.
wherever you want the meeting is fine. Just let us know, because that also needs to be correct on here as well.
How much actual,
Where do you want the meeting, Jeff?
how much actual more room does BFA?
I would
give
say
us?
BFA.
A lot more room.
A lot more room in the library?
There
There's
is.
certainly more parking, you know,
Okay.
Yeah.
everybody's
I think-
familiar with it.
I think we did it here last year because it was, the conference room was new.
Yep,
And
so we're gonna say it'll be at BFA.
let's ask our administrator. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
BFA library?
Thank you.
Yep.
27th?
Wednesday night.
That was the 28th.
Well, we put it on the 27th, which is the Wednesday night, which would be your typical board meeting nights. We could do it on the 26th, which is a week before town meeting.
Oh, sorry, my pronouns.
And the 26th is the second day of the district state alpine, or the district alpine meet, so.
What was that, I'm sorry?
The 26th is BFA's
I don't know, I printed it
District.
out the week and a half.
alpine meet that BFA is hosting this year. So it'd be easier on the 27th.
That's also during February break.
It always is.
Always is.
It has
Does
to
that
be,
hinder our families who might be taking their kids away from being able to come in and
It always does.
I think it does, but we're required by law
we're
to do it
required
within
by
a certain
law
window.
to have it with no more than 10 days before,
Which you're
and
stuck.
no less than 5.
Never
Oh, the night before, but no more than 10 days.
So why don't we just keep it the 27th? That sounds like that works the best for everybody.
Okay.
27th, BFA Library,
Yeah.
sound right?
And Article
What
7
time,
is,
6 PM, right?
Yes.
yep. And Article 7 is the one where we have the bond information. And then there's 2 paragraphs also. The last one, which is in bold, is a requirement for a bond vote. We have to have that language. So we go.
Even though we haven't seen state funds and.
Yes. So we've also included a little paragraph above it explaining that there are no state funds, but we have to put this paragraph in here anyway.
So that, Martha, that first, excuse me, the first paragraph under Article 7, is that written in,
That's written
that
in
manner?
legalese. Yes, it was reviewed by bond counsel, which is the, other than legal counsel.
Because
to
normal
make
people
sure.
would never write it like that.
Right, exactly. And that's what we said, it's like, it's so confusing, but that's it's in statute that it has to be worded that way.
Even the question mark at the end of it?
Yes. Yes.
Not a
All of them should have a question mark after it, which they do. A question mark because you're asking the voters. It's a
Yes,
question.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
And then the only thing I would reiterate on Article 6, that is that 0 is a number.
Yep. I've got written in my, in handwritten, I've got 0.49%.
It's important.
It is
really-
very
it's
important. Yes, because we don't want people looking at it and thinking it's 4.9
Make
or
decimal-
49%.
Make the decimal point really big.
Is there an opportunity in that in the last 2 statements, put somewhere, get a yes and a no out of it also? For people that might not understand that in favor means yes?
She's not looking at the name. She's looking
I'm just trying to,
She's looking at the older version. Oh,
I'm looking at an older version.
right. The
Because I
warning.
printed it out like,
Yeah.
only like 35 minutes ago.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
the warning won't have that, but the ballot will have a yes or no box to check whether or not yes or no.
But will the wording be such as, if in favor of the bond issue, make a cross in this square? Are those words the word?
I'm sorry,
If in favor of the bond issue, make a cross in this square? Is that the lingo you have on your?
oh, no, those 2 lines are no longer on the warning.
It's
I
not on
understand
mine.
that, but is
Oh.
that the wording that will be on a
On
ballot?
the ballot,
Or is that just
sure.
short?
Statute, I don't know if it has to be on the ballot. Right. We're not sure what the actual ballot will look like.
will probably be a yes or a no would be the
Right,
yes.
what troubles me is the in favor versus not in favor, rather
Right.
than a yes for yes and a no
No
for
for
no.
no.
Because it will be confusing after
We will have to
reading
go
all
with whatever is in statute for a bond vote. And if in statute it says we have to have that language,
I
we
get
may
that.
have to have that language.
Yeah.
But we will get that clarified when it comes time to getting
Thank
the ballots written up for.
Anything else on this?
So Article 6 and 7. 7, I might be looking at the wrong. 7 just kind of repeats. What is 7 asking?
It's asking if they will approve a bond for $5.7 million.
6 is the budget.
Oh, 6 is the budget, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
6 is the budget, yeah.
I need new glasses.
Between 5 million and 51 million, or 50, whatever.
Yeah, it's gonna look kinda, because the first one's gonna say 57 million, the second one's gonna say 5.7 million,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So for a bond article, we don't need to, you don't need an impact like you do for a budget, because it's, the bond payment's included in the
That'll be
budget.
in the presentation.
It will be, the bond payments will be in the budgets when the bond
Right,
payments
that's what I'm just
actually come
asking,
due,
so
right?
so there's no law that they added that separating the impact, because, you know, they used to not do that on the ballot for the budget.
No, that will be included in the budget information when,
Okay,
when
thank
it
you.
impacts those budgets.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
Mhm.
Anything else?
No?
Good.
Good.
Okay. We'll just do item 7C, we have a staff request, it's a leave request, attachment 7C1. It's pretty straightforward.
Recommendation?
I'm sorry?
I'll make a motion to approve it. Yeah.
So, any questions or discussion on it? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Date 0. Here's the warrants. Motion to approve the warrants.
So moved.
Mike?
Second.
Thank you, Nelda. Discussion on the warrants? Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Warrants approved, date 0. Superintendent's report, 8A.
Just a couple things, folks. First off,
That's nice, huh?
I asked that you look around the room. We've really we're very pleased that starting last month, art teachers are putting student artwork into the room. We're still tweaking a little bit, and we're going to add some other places. But once a month, Ben Raymond, who's the art teacher at Fairfield, has volunteered to take this on. And every month, there's a different teacher who will just be displaying student artwork. This month happens to be Fairfield. And I just think it adds a little bit to a room that's been kind of neutral for years. And they were actually here today for in-service, and they were talking about a few things that they're going to do to spiff it up a little bit more, but it's a nice start. So if you ever do see some of the art teachers who've put our work in there, I think they would really appreciate knowing that you saw some of the work. There's also some out in the lobby, which probably even gets more people looking at it, so three-dimensional stuff.
It's a great idea.
Yep. Yep. Just a reminder, because it wasn't on the agenda, we do have negotiations for support staff on the 14th, 6 o'clock.
Correct.
Although we do have a committee, anybody else is welcome if you want to put yourself through that.
Still ever miss a meeting.
You'll learn.
Is that the first session? Or?
That's the first real session, yeah.
Yes.
Where's it?
Well, ground level right here.
It will be here.
And the final thing I have is you'll notice when you see the newsletter, which I believe we just put in, so you may not have seen the whole thing. It's slightly different format now. We have our outreach person, Vino Pastoris, thank you, we're actually outreach with the tech center, who's volunteered to take that on. First, I want to thank Brenda for doing it for years and doing a nice job. But he's volunteered to take it on and work with principals and get the information and stuff like that. So you will see a little different format because obviously he's a different person and he's doing a little different design. And that's all I have.
Just one more?
Yes.
There was this Christmas holiday in between.
Slaggards.
That was actually dessert that was made by our culinary arts students for the festival.
Oh,
of
that's good
trees.
to know.
Did you bring any?
No. I didn't even have it back then.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some board administrator handouts. And move right into central office administrator reports. Let's start with Michelle.
Okay, so one of the things I've been working on is trying to set up with Joanne and I both leaving, kind of some roadmaps for next year. So just kind of putting together things to help with the transition. I also wanted to let you know the truancy panel is, I don't think I told you this yet, that they've changed their policy and they are no longer accepting referrals for 7th grade and up. They will only accept truancy referrals if you're 6th grade or under. And for 7th grade and up, the schools are supposed to write affidavits that will go to the court, basically. So we're supposed to meet this week, and now there's emails going around that might be postponed, but we don't really have a process that's redefined yet. So that's something that we'll be working on in the next
Michelle, have
month.
they hired a truancy specialist?
They have not yet. It's still open. So that's the other, I think, kind of like loose thing out there is that these referrals are coming in, it's going to the panel, but there's not really anyone. Right now, the NCSS is trying to pick up the pieces for it, but there's not really anyone to follow through with the way it was being followed through before.
And but prior to this, 7th and 8th grade truancy issues would go through this panel?
Maybe 7th through 12th.
And
yeah.
Did they make this decision because they don't have the staff to
It was
staff
made
it?
statewide, and it's a DCF policy. It's not a local decision. So it was effective October 18th.
Do you think it's a good idea? Your personal opinion? Or?
I mean, I think Joanne could speak to it from the history perspective more than I could, but I don't think that it's a good idea to have schools writing affidavits on
I'd be
kids.
happy to speak. This breaks my heart. It took 4 to 5 years of real, true community collaboration to put this whole project together. NCSS threw in a position. For us, we had a couple of, I don't know if people remember Laurel Chen. She was probably the first person in that position. We've had several incredible people who worked with families, worked with the agencies in the schools to remove the barriers. It was never a punitive model. It was to remove whatever barriers were keeping kids from school. And it worked incredibly well when all the community partners were working together. So I'm not sure, Michelle kind of took that over this year. I had to get something off my plate. That was one of the things. I'm not quite sure what happened. I do know that the DCF policy did change because there was a they have 3 categories of abuse and neglect, unmanageable children, and then it's called CHINSD, a child in need of care and supervision, specific to truancy. And I'm not sure if it was about capacity. They're in the same boat as a lot of us in terms of resources. And so that did go through the state system, and that was no longer an issue. This is the first I've heard about anybody, 7th grade and up. And clearly the courts also have a resource issue, so I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with this. And so personally, if this is the direction the state is going to go in, then get the truancy statute out of the statutes, because there's nothing we can do to enforce that statute. So I don't know. I'd be very curious to see where this goes.
So it sounds like DCF is kind of leading the way here, but they have the support of the courts, or am I getting that wrong?
Well, to tell the schools to write an affidavit implies that they have the support, or we have the support of the courts. That's yet to be seen.
Who's in charge of truancy? The schools or DCF?
It's in statute. No one's in charge per se, but it's in statute, so it's legislated. We can file an affidavit in that, but then the state's attorneys can choose to bring it forward or not.
So there's a statute that's vague, I'm assuming. I mean, I'll look it up. I find this to be, after what was all the work that's been done, I find it to be offensive. I think it's, I don't know where this came from, and if it is DCF, I'm a little concerned that they have that kind of power.
Me too. And at the time when things were up and running and running smoothly, this was a model project within the state of Vermont at the time it was developed. So to see it go away, or to be told, okay, schools, write an affidavit and send it to the court, and then maybe you'll hear back and maybe you won't. So yes, and please, what the statute basically specifies is that anybody between the ages of 5 and 16 must attend school, although 16-year-olds, with the permission of a parent, can drop out.
Yeah, but I understood we were looking at truancy at different ages for different reasons, and actually delving into why this was happening.
And it wasn't punitive, right?
And, well, it sounded pretty good to me. I mean, like the first time I ever heard of it, and I'm sorry, indulge me for a minute here. Shouldn't somebody say something to somebody at the DCF? Does this board come out and say that this is a mistake, we don't like this, or is that our role? I mean, it sounds like they just kicked the legs right out from under the whole thing. And DCF did it, it sounds like, and they're empowered by a court. I don't see a court order. I'm a little concerned about that. And I don't know, as a school district, if we should address that.
I don't know that we know enough about it, Mike. This is the first I've heard about it, and I mean, I have this much knowledge of it, and so I don't understand the whole mechanism of it, what happened, what's been taken away, so I can't answer that.
And I would toss that back to Michelle, because I have not been part of this panel since the beginning of the school year this year.
But if it's something you want to pursue, then I say we should put it on an agenda for a future meeting, and
Yeah, it was
have a
basically
presentation so we can understand
policy
it.
that was like in effect October 18th. We found out about it. DCF came to the panel, and we had referrals to talk about, but they kind of said, well, hold
But
on.
it's way deeper than that.
Yeah, but that's kind of like, it's a memo that came out, so.
I mean, we need to understand
Yeah.
the history of it, we need to understand how it used to work, how it works now, what they actually took away. Personally, I'm not sure I know what they took away.
Yeah. No, and that's why.
I don't know enough
Right.
I
to
just
say
hear
whether I
she
may
doesn't
or
like it, and Joanne doesn't seem to like it either, and these are two people who are involved in it. So I Olivia, it's up to the rest of you, but I think it should be something we put on the agenda and find out more about.
Yeah, I've never had the privilege of seeing it functional.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's just, we haven't had a person, someone's not been hired, and so it's kind of, all this year, it's kind of been floundering, and then the memo came out, and I can tell you that there were people around the region who were not happy with it. In addition, I mean, they feel exactly like Joanne does, like kind of what are we doing and what are we supposed to do in what direction, and everyone was upset that schools are being asked to write affidavits against the children, that they're trying to establish relationships, build relationships, and support families.
So let me boil this down. Something good you guys put together is happening, and then an agency came along that's empowered by the legislative statute and said, okay, we're going to do it differently, and as a school board or as a school district, we have to do what they say. So I want to know more about this. I don't like this. I mean, it seems like there's a misplacement of where this decision is made, and I don't know. I could be wrong, but
I'm not ready to take that leap yet because I don't know enough about it. I don't even know for sure what it is.
I know, but I'm asking if we could look into it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Whatever, we can put it on agenda for future meeting.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
The only other thing that I think is a celebration is a few times now I've been able to sit in on meetings. And so, my early ed background, there's not very many IEP meetings that I have gone to where students are leading the IEP meetings, but being able to see students at the other end leading their own IEP meetings and advocating for where they're going to go as adults, and it's been really, really fun. And I can't say a lot because it's confidential, but I walk away from those meetings thinking about all of the people along the way that contributed to these kids going out into the world ready to do whatever they're going to do and able to reflect on where they've been, the skills they have, and what they still need to work on. So that's been really, really fun.
Let's go to Kathy.
Well, let's see, negotiations is definitely on the top of my pile of things to do, including getting data ready for the state team that's going to be negotiating health coverage for us statewide. They gave us a pretty extensive spreadsheet to fill out. We've got that ready to be sent to them. Still had a couple of questions to have answered, but they wanted information by individual on some of the things that they're looking at. So that has been interesting. We are interviewing for special ed director. Right now we have another interview tomorrow. And then we are in evaluation and the normal HR work around evaluation and review of performance with individuals in our district. Putting together information for our admin team on positions in and out. We keep track of that every month now. It's been a very good process to keep us up to speed about the pluses and minuses. That's why we know exactly where we are with staffing. We are looking at some possible proposals for, I like to call it allowing career pathways for folks. We start with paras, and we've got some specialty positions like attendance monitor and behavior monitor. We're looking at, what are the kinds of resources we can put in place to support students that would also give kind of a career ladder for people in our district. And I think it's important for us to have that for folks. We lose a lot of people in the first and second year, so I think the more we can do to make a career ladder available to folks, I think the longer we will get to keep them in our district. And let's see, memos and ground rules and wellness policy, and trying to wrap up policy versus procedure so that we have most of those in place now for Maple Run, but there's still a few more for us to get in place to make sure we have all of our policies and procedures on our website for folks to see. And that's what we're doing.
Questions for Kathy?
Are we pretty good with policy?
Yes.
No.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Plugging away on wellness, it's a big policy. And we have a lot of folks very, very interested in what that's going to look like.
Hey, Mona?
We are continuing our work to build a shared understanding of curricular needs within our district. We're looking at streamlining professional development for next year, aligned to teacher needs, and maybe discussion around really looking at our teachers and what they think that, the needs are, so that we can bring it back to the leadership team and figure out what professional development is needed for next year. We're looking at assessment data so that we can further identify our needs, and ultimately compiling a district plan to guide our work for the next 5 years around instruction, assessment, and data, and to streamline this whole process as we grow together to make sure that our students are having an equitable education within Maple Run.
Any questions? What's you, Joanne?
Well, I feel like I just saw you guys, and that was an emotional journey for me. Well, I got to get around to all of the schools today, with the exception of Fairfield, but you guys were down here, so I caught you then. Some fabulous presentations that went on in the district. Starting at SATEC this morning with a woman named Rebecca Haslam, who does a lot of work about implicit bias, which has been, and I don't know if you guys know, I discovered this about 5 years ago when I was reading our hazing, harassment, and bullying policy, that at the end of the policy, it said equity coordinator, and there was my name. It was a bit of a surprise at the time.
We've got your name all over the place.
Apparently you do. You're going to have to change a lot of things. Anyways, that really, I kind of, I dove into that position, and what I'm seeing is an increase in reports and investigations, and it's the way the culture is right now. There's a lot of things going on. So it was great to see this woman do a fabulous training with both Fairfield and City School staff this morning. She also presented a documentary that apparently Kevin has access to, and with a former student, a former City School student who was in the documentary. She's in college now, so that was really cool. And then Michelle and I have been working with I'm sorry. The occupational therapist and physical therapist. Is that me? Is that like the buzzer?
I'm just turning the whole thing off.
You're
going to turn it off.
Sean, help him. There you go. Okay.
My apologies.
And the final thing I wanted to say was that we've been working with the occupational therapist and the physical therapist since the beginning of the school year for several reasons. The cost of these services, their contract employers have been increasing significantly, and the caseloads as well. So we've been working with them to formalize a referral system. So it's not, I'm going to catch you in the hallway and say, hey, by the way, can you come by and see this child? That there's going to be a formal process in place. They did a fabulous, Sandra Casavant, Tamara Yando, Erin Medic, and Heather Blackburn did a really nice a presentation this afternoon for all of the district special educators, with the exception of BFA, because BFA was having Anti-Defamation League training, so we will catch them at a later time. So, and building resources. So we're building capacity without building costs, which I'm very excited about. And on that note,
You may proceed, I'm done.
Melanie?
Well, I have to concur with what Joanne just said, that in service with Rebecca Haslam was absolutely fabulous. I know the teachers that I was sitting with had wonderful things to say. We talked about how, some of the things she had written were for, only went down as far as K. We talked about how to develop that for pre-K. It was great information. Some teachers are already looking at ways to start implementing those things in the classroom. So that was lovely. The SPED meeting, again this afternoon, was fantastic because it gave some clarification for ways to work with the OTPTs. That clarification, knowing just what to do will streamline it both for the children and, of course, for our budget later on, that direction. We also had a large group today that were completing their CPR certification next door, which is required for our child care licensing. So we had a lot of things going on. Of course, it's right after Christmas, so we had parents culminating events. There were gingerbread houses galore, gingerbread vans. They were singing. It was wonderful. And on top of that, we did also have some of the serious pieces going on. We submitted our first round of data to AOE through Teaching Strategies Gold, which measures the pre-K students' development toward their early literacy and early numeracy, and of course social and emotional, which are all very important, and of course what we're working on as a district. We're just getting those beginning foundation pieces. And to that note, we also, the teachers also, they have been working so hard, submitted their eDECA information, which is just another measurement that measures students' initiative, self-regulation, the relationship pieces, and gives some strategies for teachers to work with those students to, raise that from an area of need to typical to a strength for them, and which is our goal. We want to help them get them ready for kindergarten. Also, on the Christmas note as well, it reminded me, Curiosity Corners. Also, our pre-K teachers, on top of doing all of this, also work with their teachers to raise donations of toys, sweaters, and other items for All Dogs Need a Haven Rescue, which was adorable. Everyone had a good time with those parts and pieces. And in our community, we're partnering with Chittenden County, also with our partner sites. We have our sites outside where we're getting those students ready to enter into the classrooms next year as well, working with them to help them have outreach with more multi-tiered systems of support, that baseline areas, getting them ready out in our sites as well, and streamlining the process when we invoice and send that money out for the Act 166. So some great parts and pieces going on, both in-house and out-of-house and in all of our schools. So very proud of the work everyone's doing.
Any questions? Martha, anything else you want to add?
Well, besides the budget, the business office area, we've been working on finalizing the FY18 audit, which I'm hopeful that by the end of the month, maybe February, we'll have an audit for you to review. Also working in concert with HR, prepping for negotiations. We're also working on the financial software that the state says we need to move to. Basically right now we're working on the crosswalk of our current chart of accounts with the new state chart of accounts, which that's an undertaking, but we're working towards it. And then we're just doing the regular paying the bills and paying the employees their wages and keeping things running.
It's a good thing to do.
It's a good thing to do. They like it when we do that.
What's your target for when you're going to switch financial software?
Well, we don't have an official target yet, but the state is saying that they're hoping that we will all go by July 1st.
That's because of that support issue
Right.
now.
But
that's not likely.
yeah, we're not sure if that will be the official date that we switch over.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Anyone else want to add anything? Agenda items for next meeting. We have the, what do you want to call it, truancy affidavit issue?
I'd like to know how it happened. And what it means to our students. It doesn't have to be next meeting, I mean, it takes a while to put.
I don't think it can be, it's going
I
to
think
be a
you put it down.
presentation,
Yeah.
application.
It's just,
Do you want me to see if we can get DC up here to present?
sure,
Good luck.
I do, but.
Okay,
Central office restructuring proposal.
absolutely. Office restructuring. And we'll adopt the budget.
Great. And approve a warning.
Anything else? Okay, we got nothing for executive session, so we're adjourned, folks. Thank you very much.
Restructuring includes no more.